It started with a smile, the kind Kelly Clarkson is famous for. Warm, welcoming, effortlessly disarming. But within minutes that smile would vanish, replaced by stunned silence, shaking hands, and a moment that would send shockwaves through daytime television. Because on that stage, under the blinding lights of the Kelly Clarkson Show, something unraveled, something no one saw coming. Prince Harry, the royal-turned-rebel, walked in expecting a routine interview. What he got instead was a full-blown emotional standoff that brought the show to a screeching halt. Words were exchanged, lines were crossed, and by the end, security was called not because of a technical issue, but because one of the most high-profile interviews of the year had imploded, live and unfiltered. This wasn't just a bad day on set. It was a televised confrontation that exposed deep cracks in celebrity culture, media trust, and personal boundaries. So how did a promo spot about veterans turn into a war of words that left the audience breathless and the host visibly shaken? Stick around, because what happened behind those studio walls will challenge everything you thought you knew about control, compassion, and collapse. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to like the video and drop a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Kelly's shoes? Pushed forward with the question or protect the guests' boundaries? The Kelly Clarkson Show wasn't just another talk show. It was a sanctuary, a rare daytime space where celebrities let their guards down, where tough exteriors softened and heartfelt stories flowed naturally. Over the years, Kelly had become more than a host. She was a trusted confidant, a voice of empathy in an industry addicted to spectacle. So when Prince Harry's PR team reached out, hoping to spotlight his newest campaign supporting veterans and mental health, the booking felt like a perfect fit. No tension, no drama, just a meaningful conversation, or so everyone believed. That morning, the studio buzzed with quiet anticipation. Crew members moved briskly through their pre-show routines, while producers double-checked notes and lighting. Cues. Harry arrived promptly, flanked by his usual detail, polite, poised, familiar with this world, but not quite at ease in it anymore. Backstage, Kelly ran through her outline. Her notes were filled with softballs, warm, thoughtful prompts about Harry's foundation, his time in California, his personal mission to uplift those silently suffering. "I'm excited for this one," she told her producer with a smile. "He's always been so grounded in these interviews. Our audience is going to love hearing what he's doing now." Everything about the setup screamed safe, predictable, controlled, until it wasn't. Because once the cameras rolled and the conversation began, that comfortable rhythm Kelly had perfected, the easy laughs, the thoughtful nods began to falter, and it all started with a question she never intended to be the match that lit the fuse. But what was it about this one moment, this one question, that pushed everything off course? The shift was subtle but irreversible, and what followed was pure chaos. From the moment Kelly welcomed Prince Harry to the stage, everything seemed perfectly on script. Her tone was warm, her body language open, the kind of setting where guests usually exhaled and leaned into the conversation. "We're here with Prince Harry," she beamed, her voice inviting yet measured. "And I've got to say, you just keep evolving. Every time I see you, you look more and more like someone fully owning their story. How are you feeling about this next chapter in your life here in the US?" Harry smiled. That familiar, guarded but genuine grin he'd mastered over years in the spotlight. He thanked her, spoke passionately about his foundation's latest work, described community programs helping veterans reintegrate after service, the emotional toll of PTSD, and the importance of healing through connection. For the first 10 minutes, the interview was a masterclass in daytime television harmony. Two seasoned professionals sharing space, exchanging stories that mattered, while an audience nodded along, engaged and inspired. But then Kelly pivoted. "I have to ask, and I hope it's okay. There's been a lot of attention on your relationship with your family back in the UK. I think a lot of people watching really admire how open you've been about your personal journey. How do you find balance between this new life you're building and those old ties?" The moment the words left her lips, everything shifted. It wasn't explosive. Not at first, but the silence that followed was heavier than it should have been. Prince Harry's expression didn't crumble, it hardened. His posture straightened, eyes narrowing just slightly. A flicker of something unspoken danced across his face, and the air inside the studio seemed to tighten. He leaned forward, slightly, voice even, but laced with restraint. "I thought we were here to talk about veterans, Kelly, not palace drama." Kelly kept her smile, but her fingers twitched slightly on the armrest. A small, unconscious reaction that only her longtime crew would notice. She nodded gently, voice still calm. "Of course, and the work you're doing is incredible. I just thought, since you've shared so much with the world, maybe offering some insight into how you juggle it all might help others going through similar struggles." Harry's tone sharpened. My authenticity, he said slowly, doesn't mean I owe the world every piece of me. It doesn't mean every conversation has to circle back to a family that's already been dissected by the press more than anyone should ever endure. The audience, who had been chuckling and clapping minutes earlier, fell eerily silent. Producers watching from the control room froze. This wasn't the kind of tension they could smooth out in post-production. This was live, raw, building. And yet that moment, as subtle as it began, was only the beginning. What came next wasn't just discomfort. It was confrontation. What began as a calm correction had now morphed into something heavier. Prince Harry sat forward in his chair, his expression no longer composed but charged. Not angry. Not yet. But something closer to cornered, defensive, resigned. Kelly, he said, his tone clipped. I came here to talk about the real work we're doing. Real people, real issues. Veterans who are facing challenges most of us couldn't begin to imagine. That's why I'm here, not to revisit headlines and old wounds. Kelly's smile faltered just slightly. Her instincts, honed over years in the business, kicked in. She softened her voice, tried to pivot. Absolutely, she nodded. Folding her hands, let's go back to that. I know you've been working with a veteran recently who really impacted you. Would you be open to sharing that story? But the atmosphere had already changed. Harry didn't relax. He didn't smile. Instead, he let out a tight breath, the kind someone gives when they feel unseen. Do you actually want to hear about that, Kelly? Or do you want a soundbite? Something digestible, clickable, something that wraps trauma up in a neat little package so it fits inside a 7-minute segment? A hush swept over the audience. Kelly held her ground. Her posture stayed open, but her grip on the cue cards had tightened. Viewers wouldn't notice, but anyone who knew her could read the tension in her jaw. The sudden lack of ease in her tone. I want to give you the space to speak about what matters most to you, she replied carefully. That's why you're here, to shine a light. But Harry wasn't done then. Why bring up my family at all? He asked, louder now. Why is it that no matter what I do, what we do, someone always drags it back to the same narrative? The royal rift, the drama, the crown. I left that world. I'm not part of it anymore, but I can't seem to escape it even here. His voice echoed in the studio, not because of the volume, but because of the emotion behind it. Tired, raw, and rising. In the control room, Kelly's producer signaled to wrap the segment. But this wasn't something that could be edited out later. The moment was unfolding live, and neither host nor guest seemed ready to let it go. Kelly, trying to stabilize the space, leaned in gently. Harry, she said, her voice low and steady, people connect with you not just because of the work, but because of the why. The journey, the decisions you've made, the pain you've shared. It makes the cause feel real to them. Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. Inspiring? Is that what you think this is? He snapped. Let me tell you what's inspiring. Kelly, a single mother who just left active duty and finally found a support system for her PTSD. A veteran who walked through our doors after 3 years of silence and finally spoke. That's what matters. That's the story. But instead, we're talking about royal family gossip because that's what the industry expects. And in that moment, the dam cracked, because what was supposed to be an uplifting conversation had officially become a confrontation. By now, the tension wasn't just palpable, it was radiating. The audience, once leaning in with excitement, was now sitting stiffly in silence, watching the kind of raw moment daytime TV usually edits out. Except this wasn't going anywhere, and neither was the storm building between guest and host. Prince Harry exhaled hard, adjusting in his seat like he was bracing for a fight he didn't plan for but wasn't going to walk away from. You know what I've realized, Kelly? He said, voice rising. This whole system, this polished, smiling, camera-ready thing, it's not built for substance. It's built to extract. To take the most painful, personal pieces of a person's story and turn it into just another segment. Kelly kept her voice even, but her words came quicker now, her composure flickering at the edges. I think that's unfair, she said. We've had hundreds of guests sit in that chair and talk about the things that matter. To them, their work, their pain, their victories. I care about those stories. Harry leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. Then why did you bring up my story? Why not just talk about the work? Why make it personal again? Every time I try to talk about mental health or suicide prevention or veterans, someone shifts the spotlight back to my past, to the palace, to my family, and I'm tired of it. Kelly took a breath. Her voice was lower now, tighter, because your past is part of why people listen. Harry, it's not about gossip, it's about context. Your voice carries weight because of where you came from. Harry didn't blink. And that weight is crushing me. For a beat, there was silence. Thick, uncomfortable. Then Kelly spoke, choosing each word like she was walking across ice. I hear that, she said, and I respect it. But you've also chosen to be public about your story. You've spoken openly about your mental health, your family, your decision to step away from the monarchy. I'm not asking for scandal. I'm asking for reflection, for growth. Harry's eyes narrowed. You think I owe that to you? To the audience? Because I once shared something? I have to keep sharing it. Keep bleeding in public so it feels authentic enough for the next segment. Kelly's tone shifted less. Gentle now? More grounded. I think when you agree to sit in that chair and speak to people who admire what you've done, it's okay to expect some openness. And then it broke. Harry stood up. The mic wire snapped taut across his chest. His security detail shifted just slightly off stage, watching closely. I've been open, he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. I've talked about things no one in my position ever talks about. Therapy, trauma, suicidal thoughts, the cost of walking away from my family, but that doesn't mean I'm here to be picked apart. This isn't therapy. This isn't entertainment. This was supposed to be about the veterans. Kelly's own expression stiffened. She stood too. You're right, she said, but this is also my show, and I ask questions because I believe the answers matter. Harry stepped closer, the air between them crackling. Do they? Or do the clicks matter more? The headlines? The viral moment? Kelly didn't flinch. But her voice came sharper now, firm and cutting. You're not the only one carrying something heavy, Harry. You don't get to walk in here and lecture me about pain or authenticity when I've spent years being honest with my audience. I've bared my soul too. His voice dropped, quiet but laced with fury. Then you should know what it feels like to be stripped bare on cue. And just like that, it wasn't just a disagreement. It was a fracture, one that couldn't be edited out, apologized for, or walked back. There was a beat, a long, loaded silence where neither moved. Then Kelly broke it, her voice calm, until now, dropped the last of its courtesy. You know what, Harry? She said. Maybe you were being difficult. Maybe this isn't about boundaries. Maybe it's about control. Maybe the second someone asks something you didn't pre-approve, you shut down the conversation and start swinging. The audience gasped. Even the producer in the control room froze. Harry blinked. His voice, when it came, was low and sharp. Excuse me, you heard me, Kelly said, stepping closer. You talk about wanting change, wanting to help, wanting people to listen, but the minute someone asks about you, you act like it's an ambush, like we've violated something sacred. Maybe the problem isn't the media, Harry. Maybe the problem is you for a second. Harry just stared at her, and then something shifted in his eyes. You want honesty? He asked, his voice brittle. Fine, let's be honest. I came on this show as a favor. I canceled meetings, cleared my schedule, prepped every single talking point to highlight veteran mental health, and instead, I walk into a minefield. Kelly fired back instantly. It was one question. It was the question, he snapped. The one that always comes. The one no one can resist. You had a choice, Kelly. You could have focused on the mission, but you wanted the moment. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare suggest I used this moment to exploit you, didn't you? Harry asked, stepping even closer. Didn't? You look at that card, ask yourself what would get people to lean in, to click, to watch, and choose the family angle, because you knew it would land. Kelly's voice dropped, controlled but ice-cold. You're right. I chose it. I chose it because whether you like it or not, your personal story gives weight to your message. Your struggle is why people care about what you say. My pain is why they care. Harry's voice cracked, louder now. So I'm just the wounded prince, the walking trauma case with a cause? No, Kelly said. But you can't spend years being open and then act shocked when someone asks a follow-up. Harry's jaw clenched. His tone turned flat, almost dangerous. I've been more open than anyone. I've spoken about things that cost me everything, and you're calling me fragile? Kelly didn't hesitate if the shoe fits. It was like the air itself snapped. The word fragile seemed to ricochet around the room, hitting harder than anything said so far. It wasn't just a descriptor. It was an accusation, a judgment. Harry's face changed, not in anger but something deeper, something wounded. Fragile, he repeated, like he needed to hear it again to believe she'd said it. Yes, Kelly said, because strength isn't just about showing up. It's about being able to have a hard conversation without exploding, without turning every disagreement into betrayal. He stared at her, his entire body rigid, fists clenched at his sides. I came here to talk about people who are suffering in silence, who are fighting invisible battles. And now I'm standing here, being told I'm too sensitive because I didn't want to hand over my pain like it's a talk show prize. Kelly's voice rose, no longer controlled. This isn't about you protecting your pain, Harry. It's about you trying to control every narrative, every question, every answer. And when that doesn't happen, you burn it all down." His mouth tightened. The heat in his voice returned. Not rage, but something colder. "Maybe because I'm tired of being asked to perform my grief. Maybe I'm tired of being booked for one reason and interrogated for another." "You weren't interrogated," Kelly said, stepping closer. "You were asked a fair human question. One question. And you decided to torch everything. And with that, the interview wasn't just tense anymore. It was scorched. The bridge had burned, and neither of them was reaching for a way back. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was suffocating. Prince Harry's chest rose and fell, the pressure of the moment finally cracking through his public calm. And then, without another word, he reached behind his collar and ripped off his microphone. The wire whipped free, and the studio gasped. Kelly didn't move. She didn't blink. But behind the gloss of her stage presence, something in her hardened. "Harry," she said, her voice calm but forceful. "We are in the middle of a live broadcast. You can walk away or you can finish the conversation like the professional you claim to be." Harry looked around at the cameras, at the audience, at the crew members frozen behind the teleprompters, at Kelly still standing there, arms crossed, every inch the host, but no longer warm, no longer accommodating. "I'm done," he said flatly. "I'm done with this show. I'm done with these games. And I'm done with people pretending to care about causes just to boost their viewership." Kelly took a step forward, her voice like ice. "You don't get to stand on this stage and question my intentions. You don't get to insult me, my team, or this platform because your feelings got bruised by one question," Harry snapped. "This isn't about bruised feelings. This is about respect, about trust. I trusted that this space would be different. That maybe for once I could speak without being baited into another round of what's going on with your family. But clearly I was wrong." And that's when Kelly made a choice, one that would be replayed across social media for weeks. She turned, calmly, almost too calmly, and addressed the audience directly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice steady but clipped, "this interview is over. Security, please escort our guest out of the building." The room froze. Even Harry blinked, caught off guard. "You're having me removed?" "I'm asking you to leave," she replied. "Because what's happening now, this isn't a conversation, it's a public meltdown." Two security guards appeared from the wings, walking slowly toward the stage. Harry raised his hands. "Don't touch me. I'll go. But you should know something before I do." He turned back to her one last time, something bitter in his tone. "You talk about pain like it's a narrative, something you can wrap in a bow and hand to your viewers between commercials. But for some of us, it's not a storyline. It's our reality. It's our everyday, and we're just trying to survive it." Kelly didn't respond. She just stared at him, lips pressed tight. Harry stepped off the stage. His security team flanked him, ushering him toward the exit. The audience was completely silent. Phones now out, cameras rolling, capturing every last step of the fallout. But just before he reached the door, Harry turned around one last time. "For what it's worth," he said, his voice quieter now. "The veterans I work with, they're not fragile. They're stronger than I'll ever be. They don't need a spotlight. They just need someone who listens without trying to package their pain into entertainment." Then he was gone. And Kelly, she stood alone in front of the camera's, hands trembling slightly, her expression unreadable. She turned back to the audience, voice barely steady. "We'll be right back after this break." The screen faded to black, but the damage was already done. The clip had been captured. The fallout was coming, and nothing for either of them would ever quite be the same again. The clip went viral before the commercial break even ended. Within minutes, Twitter was ablaze with hashtags. TikTok was flooded with split-screen reactions. YouTube reaction videos were already in production. And the question that echoed louder than anything else was this? What just happened? This was supposed to be safe ground, a routine spot on daytime TV to promote charitable work. But somehow, it became something else. Something raw. Something deeply uncomfortable. Some called it a breakdown. Others called it a breakthrough. Depending on who you ask, Prince Harry was either standing his ground or completely unraveling. Kelly was either pushing too hard or finally pushing back against celebrity PR control. There were no easy heroes, no clean villains, just two public figures, caught in a moment where boundaries, pain, power, and perception collided. Live and unfiltered. And maybe that's why it hit so hard. Because this wasn't just about an interview gone wrong. It was about what happens when personal trauma becomes public conversation, when the need to protect one's dignity collides with the pressure to perform, when even the most well-meaning questions strike nerves buried deeper than anyone realized. Prince Harry wanted to speak about veteran mental health, about suicide prevention, about the invisible wounds no one talks about enough. And he was right. Those stories do matter, but Kelly Clarkson, seasoned, empathetic, and under the bright lights, also had a job to do. She asked a question that millions wanted to know, not because she wanted drama, but because sometimes the why behind the work makes people listen more closely. It was one question, one choice, and yet it unraveled everything. So what do we take away from this? Was it a simple misunderstanding that spiraled out of control? Or did it reveal something deeper about trust, trauma, and the limits of what should be shared in public? Was Harry justified in walking off? Or did he sabotage the very cause he came to promote? And was Kelly out of line? Or simply doing what every interviewer is trained to do? We may never get a clear answer, but we can ask the question. That matters most now. Where's the line between vulnerability and exploitation, between storytelling and spectacle? Now it's your turn. If you were in that studio watching it all unfold, what would you have done? Was Kelly wrong for asking about his family? Or was Harry too defensive for an honest conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss another deep dive like this. Because in a world where everyone has a story, the way we tell it matters.